Welcome back to ValorC3 Tech Bytes. Today we're going to talk a little bit about virtual machine management in Private Cloud Director. Previously we did a high-level overview of the product in which we kind of touched on all the feature sets down the left side of the menu here. Today we're going to focus in on the virtual machines components. And this just gives us good general insight on what's going on in these VMs, as well as the ability to manage those systems, whether it be resizing a disk, resizing the instance, or even performing some regular self-service actions like a reboot of the VM or a hard stop or a forced shutdown of that virtual machine. So as I navigate over in Private Cloud Director to the virtual machines menu section, I can click on virtual machines, and this gives me my high-level overview of the VMs I have running within my tenant. You'll see here I have access to some information right off the bat. It's going to give me my overview, my tenant quota overview, as well as some sub information about each individual virtual machine. If I want to dive a little bit deeper, I just click on that virtual machine's hyperlink name. And it's going to give me access to some self-service actions here, as well as a little bit more detail when it comes to the networking, previous tasks, resource utilization, etc. You'll see here, you can see previous tasks that I performed against the virtual machine up top, whether that be reboot. It even shows the date that I created the virtual machine. I have access here just within the regular VM menu to see what networks have been assigned, as well as the IP address, MAC address, the type of IP address. And I have the ability to manage my volume in here. So from a self-service perspective, this is pretty useful because now I can actually review usage or resource utilization on a variety of different things here from within this virtual machine. And this goes anywhere from 5 minutes out to like 60 days, depending on how long that VM's been running. But it gives us good overall statistics and metrics on how this VM's been operating and what its usage and capacity looks like. Up here at the top, if I need to perform any actions on this VM as a self-service user, I can perform a reboot, a hard reboot. If I need to do a forced stop, I can do so. Network actions, I have the ability to add a network interface, add a public IP, remove a public IP, etc., etc. And then some other actions up here. If I need to take a snapshot of this VM, I have the ability to do so through this other actions menu up here, as well as manage that volume. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and increase the volume size of this virtual machine by clicking on this hyperlink down here for the volume tied to it. This is going to take me over to that specific virtual machine's volume, and it's going to show you here on the left side, it's attached VM. It's going to give you the UUID of that, the storage backend that it's tied to, the size, etc., etc. If I click this actions tab up here, I have the ability to click extend volume, which is going to allow for me to go ahead and extend this volume in real time. So I'm going to take that 80 gig drive out to 120 gigabytes. I'll click extend. It's going to give us a status over here, update of extending. And then as this progresses, it'll show you that it's now in use. And you can see that that VM size has now had the disk expanded from 80 to 120 gigabytes. So if I go back into that virtual machine now, I think it was Web01, we should now see my disk is 120. Because this is a Windows virtual machine, what we then have to do is actually log into that VM and use the disk utility to expand the drive within the operating system. And this is going to be dependent on whatever operating system you're utilizing in your virtual machine. So I will go ahead and log into this. It's going to take a second here for us to get in. But then I'm going to go ahead and jump over to disk utility. Then here. And then what you'll see once we get into the system is I now have that additional space added for the VM that I can expand that drive. So I'm going to go ahead and extend the volume. I go next. I'm going to add the additional 60 gigabytes there. Looks like we may have already expanded this at one point in time from 60 to 80, but we'll just kind of touch up here and take us all out to the full 120. You'll see there's a system reservation in Windows. Usually it's about 100 megabytes, so you're not going to get the full 120 gigabytes. There's usually a little overhead that gets set aside for Windows, but you'll see now that my drive has been expanded. If I go into my disk manager, my file manager, it's going to reference that new disk now being, at a capacity of 119 gigabytes. So fairly straightforward when it comes to self-service actions, the ability to get in there and expand that disk. Extremely useful. I'm going to log out of this one. But from another perspective, let's go ahead and actually resize this instance. So with self-service, you actually have the ability to come in here and resize the virtual machine itself if you're utilizing the instance model. Currently, I'm at a 4.8, 4 CPU, 8 gigs of RAM flavor. What I want to do is now take this up to a 416, and this is going to probably stun the VM when I do it, so be prepared for that. But now this will actually allow for me to resize that and put this VM into a bigger t-shirt size, and that's probably going to be relevant if you run into an issue where maybe like your database server is hitting its capacity and you need additional resources. It's as simple as getting in here and making that change on your own. So you see here, my VM state has now changed to an active resize migrating. And then what happens here is it's going to have me confirm it once it's completed. And let's see here. Refresh, resize. So now you see it says resize. So what we need to do is now confirm the resize. So, you know, if I go back into that virtual machine, I probably don't even need to open another web console window. I had one open here. If I go log back in, it should now reference that I have 16. Oops. It should now reference that I have 16 gigs of memory. If I go into Task Manager here, so you can see this is just evident of the change. So, yep, see, now we bumped up to 16 gigabytes. So that's pretty straightforward as well. So we didn't increase the CPU core count, we just increased memory, but that would be just as easy if I selected another instance model that increased the CPU size. Same thing would happen. So now if we go back to private cloud director, we'll do a refresh here. It's probably going to want me to go down here and confirm my resize. And what that's going to do is give me the option to either confirm it or revert back. And this is the last option you'll have to make this change to revert back, because once you've changed, you've made the commit to, you know, the 4 CPU, 16 gigs of memory. You're going to have to rebuild this virtual machine or like detach the disk and attach it to a new instance if you need to completely resize. But for right now, I'll confirm my resize. It'll take a moment here. And then what you'll see here is the VM state is now changed to resize, and now I'm fully referenced out as a 416 virtual machine in here. And you can see that it's evident by my virtual machine overview. So pretty easy to do on your own in the platform, just as simple as a few clicks. Obviously, you know, change in instance size obviously results in a change in cost per virtual machine. So if that's something that you know, you need to check in with ValorC3 on to verify, you know, what the cost increase is going to be. That's something you would just submit a ticket to our team for. And at that point, we could get back to you and let you know, your rate change on this specific virtual machine is going to go from X rate to this rate. And then, you know, you can make your assessment based on that. Or if you're okay or you're comfortable with it, you have a general idea what the cost increase will be, you have the ability to just go in here and scale on your own. So that's a pretty cool feature. We're going to dive back into the virtual machine just so I can kind of show you what other actions you have the ability to do here. So say we want to take a snapshot. We're about to perform some upgrades of an application running on this virtual machine. I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot of this VM. What it's going to do is going to let me know if there's any degraded things within the platform. As you can see here, we're probably doing a little bit of maintenance on something right now on this dev platform. But for right now, I'm going to just go ahead and take a snapshot. I'm going to utilize the default name here. It's going to give me the VM name plus the date and the time that I'm taking the snapshot. It'll take a few seconds here, but I can then use my images in VM snapshot section and go over to VM snapshot, and you'll see my VM snapshot is now present over here on the left side. So this is extremely helpful if you need to provision a second instance based off of that drive or a copy of that snapshot. Say you want to do something like dev work on an application server. You don't want it to necessarily be tied to the same IP address, but you want all that relevant information, that production information and production work to come over into a second VM so you can do testing on it and have a like for like scenario. This is where it becomes extremely useful, because then what I can do is I can actually create a second drive from this and then attach it to a new virtual machine, which allows for me to provision a second copy. You can also utilize the clone option here in the web VM. We go back up here, you can clone this specific VM, which is actually what I've done here. The web 02 is a direct clone of web 01. And what that does is it creates an exact copy of that virtual machine. Granted, you're going to have to go in and make some changes to networking to make sure that there's no overlap or IP conflicts. But another useful tool in here that you have at your fingertips as a self-service user. Diving back into the virtual machine itself, You'll see up here, if I need to go up and add a network interface to this specific VM, say I've added a network and I want to make sure that, or I've added a new network and I want to make sure that it gets attached to the specific virtual machine. So I have a Kubernetes network in here. I'm going to go ahead and add that network as an interface to this VM. And then what you'll see here, and this is maybe relevant if you create like separate networks for your database traffic or whatever, your application traffic from VM to VM. This is going to allow for you to attach multiple interfaces to it, and it'll probably take a second here, but we should see another network pop up down there. And because I have DHCP enabled on all these networks, you'll see that it automatically assigned that IP address to the specific virtual machine. But just as easy as that, if I've created a network in here in Geneve Layer 3, I now have the ability to just go ahead and add that network on my own as a self-service user. It gives me information like it does on the initial network about the IP address, MAC address, the type, and then whatever security groups are tied to that specific subnet here. So all in all, a lot of additional self-service actions from our legacy ValorC3 Cloud, a lot more capability in here as a self-service user. And like I said, for good measure, let's just go ahead and do a reboot of this virtual machine just to make sure that all of our changes are synchronized within the platform. Pop this out, and you'll see there after I just switched over to the web console, it showed that I had just attached a new network interface. Go back here, and usually these reboot fairly quickly. The newer versions of Windows OS are pretty consistent. Usually takes a few seconds for it to come back up and prompt us with a login. But you'll see now, I now have access to log back into the VM. Everything's done through the portal here. I don't need to be on a VPN or anything like that anymore. It's all HTTPS access. And then back in my VM, go ahead and click in our networks. And, oops, I did not want to do that. Change adapter settings. See, now I have my two network interfaces here. One was the original interface that, you know, the VM was provisioned with. Ethernet 2 is obviously the one that we just created and put on that AMP cube network. Self-service actions, about as simple as that. We're slowly adding additional features in here when it comes to other items in the product. But for the most part, this should give you a good idea of what you have the ability to control in here as a self-service user in your tenant. And like always, we will be back with more content related to managing your virtual machines and Kubernetes clusters. But again, we appreciate your time today, and we hope that you check back in with us again on the next video.